He says, like, if a tree falls in the forest and no one perceives it, does it actually exist? And my answer to that is no. I think you need a perceiver. I think there's no knowledge of something that happened. There's no knowledge of something happening. There's no knowledge of something happening that didn't happen, or there isn't knowledge of that it happened. If I get thirsty and I don't tell anyone, then you don't know that I'm thirsty. Me being thirsty doesn't exist. It only exists to me. And if I then take another example, these are just kind of more thoughts I've had about this whole kind of reality existence thing. People sort of dispute the idea of a soul, but then I thought, well, if a mind exists, then why can't a soul exist? Because the mind, you can't really, like, God-like. Science tries to prove it, and psychology tries to prove it, but we still don't know really where our thoughts come from. Like, it's still such a mystery. Biology and science come a constraint of that, and so the mind's located inside a brain, but the soul could be located inside a heart. And the mind, there's not material. That's the thing I want to say. It's not material. These things are thoughts that don't really have a location. Like, it's weird that, like, there's no material location of, well, like, it come from the left side or the right side or the center of my brain. Like, the thought could be, like, there's no material location. And you might think, well, there's these different parts of the brain that, like the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, but I don't think those are necessarily where the thought comes from. It just, this thing that arises. I'll let you talk, actually, and then I'll carry on.
Yeah, man. It is very interesting, isn't it, that we don't really understand how psychologically we are structured. We understand biological correlates, things that happen in the brain as we're doing certain behaviors, as people feel a certain way or think certain things. But there is this dimension to our psychology that can't really be explained. We'll use cognitive mappings and create diagrams and try and understand the neural circuit that gets activated during specific things. But stuff like, how does consciousness emerge and where do our thoughts emerge is still a question that's yet to be answered, which shows us that there is so much yet to be understood about the nature of ourselves and reality. And that's why I love psychology so much and philosophy, because these are questions, they're not questions that are really going to give you answers. I mean, I've started reading a book at the moment called A Life of Meaning, Relocating Your Center of Spiritual Gravity. And it's by a guy called James Hollis, PhD. He's a Jungian analyst. He went on Huberman's podcast, I think like a year ago or something. But anyway, the first point he makes in the book, which just like slaps me in the face. So it's very impressive that, like, on page 2, he's got something that's really made me think. But he said, you don't want questions to be answered. That's a lie that people tell you, that you want questions to be answered. What he says is you want a large enough question to live your life trying to answer. Because he said having a large enough question gives you a larger life. So it's like meaning is found in asking the biggest questions, not by finding answers to them. And psychology asks big questions. Philosophy is the study of asking big questions about truth and about behavior and about reality. And that's why maybe it's meaningful to us. So we should focus on what's not known. It's more interesting, I think, to live life focusing on what you don't know rather than what you do, because what you know already is boring. It's stale. It's done. It's been figured out.
Yeah, I really like that. You don't want to ask questions, or no, you don't want answers to questions.
You want to ask larger questions because larger questions lead to a larger life.
Wow. Yeah. There's back on what I was trying to get to. There's a guy called Spinoza, and he has an interesting take that the mind and the body are one. So there's not an independent duality, where we've always said, like, there's we're just the spirit that possesses a body, and they're kind of two different things. But he actually says no, it's the body's just like the object of the human mind, the extension of the mind. And if the body were not objects to the human mind, then his logic is, well, our ideas would belong to another body, or our ideas would belong to another mind. And that kind of fucked my head a bit, because then I was like, okay, there's some truth in that, like, what I find amazing is how I move my arm, and there's no it almost seems, it really seems like the mind and the body are one there. It really, like, it doesn't seem like two separate things, and the fact that I don't have to go through like a whole thing of waiting for my arm to move. It just moves in like what, less than a second, like milliseconds, right? And there's no kind of like, there's no painful waiting or sort of like almost like process of an action to happen. Like it just happens. And also just the fact that like, well, when I eat something, if I was to eat like some loads of carbohydrates, and that would directly proportionally affect my mind of, well, it's going to make my mind slow. It's going to be sluggish. And so yeah, I just, that made me think, well, are we kind of really one? And then is that maybe the same for the soul, and the soul's just kind of like mind, body, and spirit is just one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the moving your arm situation is a matter of time perception. It feels instantaneous, but so does all the things that happen in our body, really. When there has to be a small time gap where the message from your motor cortex goes down, your nervous system, and it gets to then a motor neuron that activates the muscles in your arm to move a certain way using changes in the charge due to ions passing through, passing through membranes and shit like that, right? There is a time gap there, but it is interesting because your spirit wouldn't emerge without a physical body. You wouldn't be, your spirit wouldn't be experiencing a physical world without it. So that dualism, that separation, is not always justified, I guess. And I think the answer to a lot of these big questions is it's a bit of everything. There is some separation there because we don't feel like all we are is just this physical body. But in the end, without the physical body, we wouldn't be able to have that conscious experience. So they have to be inextricably linked in a certain way.